Casey Gray, how are you?
I'm doing good. The sun is shining here and it is nice and warm. So all smiles over here.
All smiles over here with the conscious builder. You're conscious and present.
Yeah.
As I'm looking at you on the screen, so for people listening, well, this is obviously a YouTube video as well, but Casey remembered his hat and I forgot my hat. So now
you can go get it still.
It's just out of reach and I'm wired to the computer right now. It's fine. It's fine. Hey, good to have you on the show. For people who don't know, I actually listen to your podcast as well, Conscious Builder. I like the way you've got a mix of topics that are technical. I think you had a thrilling episode on vapor barriers and vapor control. And then you also do business topics. So I'm a big fan of your show. So thank you for joining us here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I've never heard the word thrilling and vapor barriers in the same sentence together. I'm glad to hear that.
I don't think a lot of people do. However, instead of me doing it, Casey, can you tell us who the heck you are and how you would come to be talking to a worldwide group of contractors and construction pros?
Yeah, so I guess I've coined myself as the Conscious Builder. That's the name of my business. Did not start as the Conscious Builder, though. It's just another regular construction company. Started when I was in my early 20s, just wanted to make some money, do good work. And then eventually that changed when I had my son and my thinking changed. So I had to think beyond myself and I started thinking about what I want to leave behind and how I want to lead by example. And that's where the Conscious Builder came into play. And we really kicked it all off with building a certified passive home. Okay. And now that's basically what we focus on, is just doing like deep energy retrofits and net zero builds, certified passive homes. Everything to do is custom and major renovations and additions, but it all has to do with sustainability. So that's our main business.
That's great. Just out of curiosity, how long did it take you to get defined on having an idea, like really defining who you are as a contractor versus I'll do anything?
Well, it didn't all happen at once, right? It's been a process for sure. At first it was, I'll do anything. And then we started to get more refined once we got clear on what we wanted to do. And it was only within the last few years, I would say, that we're really we got to a point where we could say, no, we don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. Yes, we want to do that. Right. And even up until a few years ago, we were trying to fill in the gaps, because the thing with the big projects, this is always a struggle as a business, is you're like, well, what if the next project doesn't come in, right? Yeah. And how do big projects never line up. And now with COVID and all the delays and everything, like schedules are just out the window.
Wow. Yeah.
So.
And the conversation with a homeowner to say, well, 2x4s are now $9, right? Prices are expensive. Supply chain is getting rattled a little bit.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Well, it's all helping us grow to be better business people in the future.
Absolutely.
So you and I talked about the topic here. I'm a guest on your show. We just recorded that, but now you being a guest on my show, the topic you wanted to talk about today was 5 things I wish I knew.
Yeah, the 5 things I wish I knew when I started my business, because I made a lot of mistakes. And I remember I don't know who I was talking to, but I said, they don't teach you business in carpentry school. And he said, don't worry, they don't teach you business in business school either, right?
No, they don't. They don't.
Yeah. Needless to say, I've made a lot of mistakes. So I don't know how you want to jump into that, but I do have my list and I can touch on those. And
well, I think first, thank you for saying that you've made mistakes. I had a mentor who was a very wise man, and I really miss him. He's now passed away, but I think about him all the time. And I remember when we first met, and he was like, Dominic, tell me about your life and business. And he had a gravel voice, like it just, and so I told him all the highlights, right? He goes, tell me where you failed. And I'm like, oh yeah, this, that success. He's like, no, tell me what you did wrong. And he just kept hammering me on where I failed. And I said, well, I don't think I've ever failed. He goes, well, you're not ready to succeed. And he's like, this guy's a multi-gajillionaire and actually a nice guy. He just cut through all the BS. Right. And if I can't admit my failures, and man, I can stack them up like cordwood, then I'm not ready to succeed. You're right. Because if I haven't been challenged, then I haven't really tried. So I'm eager to hear, let's start with your failures. Go through the 5 things you wish you knew as defined by your failures, maybe. And we'll get everybody around the world listening going, I did that.
Yeah, well, that's basically it, right? There's failures beyond this, but these are 5 things that I think were the core of a lot of the mistakes that I had made over the years. And the first one, it really comes down to money. And when I started, I didn't know the difference between what margin and markup was, right? So I was thinking I was making 20% on a job. So I would mark it up, like say the job was $100,000 in cost. I'd say, well, I want to make 20%. So I'd add 20% to it as a markup and be like, oh, I made 20%. And that's if the job went well, right? Which it never went perfectly.
Never goes perfect, yeah.
That's a separate story. And so that was the biggest thing, is I didn't understand that margin was being calculated based on the total revenue at the end, as opposed to, the markup, which is just something you add on to your costs, right? So
yeah,
that was it sounds simple, but it was such a big thing that a 20% markup is actually only a 16.7% margin.
I'm amazed that you know that number. Wow.
Yeah.
You're right. And so people are freaking out right now. They're like, what do you mean 20%? Because they'll say things to me and maybe to you as well. I just do things easy. Labor times 2, or I do materials and this much, and I get by. We're doing okay. Well, you're losing money. You're not doing as okay as you think. Like, you're still working just as hard, but you're not charging that extra $4,000 on that job that's actually supposed to be your profit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a huge amount. Especially if you're a general contractor, that number adds up really quick, because it's not hard to make $1 million in top line when you're a GC, right? And if you're leaving, 3.3% on the table, that adds up pretty quickly.
Very fast. Yeah. What was the first time you found out what made you go, oh my God, there's a difference between markup and margin?
You know what? I don't actually specifically remember exactly when I pinpointed that, but I think it's just been through all the business workshops, probably when I did where a lot of the numbers and spreadsheets and really wanting to understand them really started to click for me. It was when I did Tony Robbins program, Business Mastery. So I've done a lot of Tony Robbins stuff, but I did his Business Mastery one, and this would have been actually right before our son was born. Yeah, so about 8 years ago. So that's when I really started to be like, all right, I got to really make sure I understand these numbers, or else what's the point, right? If you're not in business, if you're not going to make money and you're in business, then what's the point of being in business, right? Obviously there's a mission, there's a higher purpose, but at the end of the day, as a business, you need to make money if you're going to stay in business and grow and serve, and ultimately serve the world the way you want to. You need money as a business to make that happen, right? And that just makes everybody's life better. You can do whatever you want with that money after.
Yeah. I remember that, you went and took classes from Tony Robbins. I was business partners with Brian Tracy, who's of that same kind of ilk, right? And I was with Brian once, and somebody, shouts out from the crowd, Brian, how do we help the poor and the less fortunate, right? Trying to sort of give him the gears about, because Brian's always talking about wealth creation, profits, margin, doing the best you can. And this guy from the crowd's like, what about the poor and, the less fortunate? And Brian said, don't be one of them. Like the best way I can help the poor and the less fortunate is to not be one of them, so that I can tithe, so I can give back, so I can give to my community, do mission work, whatever floats your boat, take care of my family. And I thought that was interesting. So it's cool to hear that you got your message through Tony Robbins. I got mine from Brian Tracy, and both of them are right.
Yeah, that's such a great way to answer that question too. So obviously you've been doing it a long time, but that kind of actually flows in nicely to kind of what my next thing was that I learned.
Great transition. Let's do it. What's number 2?
Environment is more powerful than willpower.
Hold on. Environment is more powerful than willpower.
Yes. So creating an environment to win. So just like being in that environment with Tony Robbins or Brian Tracy, that empowers you to want to be better. Right. If you it's kind of, you come back, you probably have the saying, you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with most. Nowadays, we're not hanging out with a lot of people, but I would also say you're, the average of the 5 types of books you read most, or podcasts you listen to. You know what I mean? Like if you listen to a lot of podcasts, you'll probably find yourself talking like the people who do the interviews. Right. So
yeah. And we're not like everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm okay to say that. It was awkward for a while, but I think people listen to my show, and certainly your show, because you talk different. And if that lines up with the fact that, they can talk to their crew a certain way, their family a certain way, their clients a certain way, but they also can speak a certain safe way with us, that is all about profits and simple systems and margins and just making things work and making sure that you're taken care of as an owner. That's, I think, why people listen, because they can virtually hang out with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
We're real, right? You talk about the real stuff.
Yeah. And the statement, you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with. I love it.
The 5 people you hang out with most, yeah. And if you think about it, like, and that would go back to what Brian Tracy was saying, like, don't become one of them. If you hang out with a bunch of poor people, you're likely going to be poor. I guarantee you, if anybody who's listening right now, if you do a quick assessment, who are the 5 people you spend the most time with, you're probably around their average weight. You make the average amount of money, you drive the, similar vehicle, you eat the same food. It's those things, right? If you only rely on willpower, you're not going to make it happen. And I knew that about myself, right? Like simple example, I wanted to start flossing. I created the environment so I would start flossing. I would put the floss where I'd see it, and I didn't put it away. I'm usually a really organized person. You wouldn't know that if you looked at my desk right now, but it's organized to me.
It's your system.
Yeah, exactly. So I had it there, and now I have that habit of flossing because I created that, right? Another saying would be, you are your habits, essentially, right? You are. So if they're good habits, then you're going to be better. If you have bad habits, well, you're going to live with those. Well, so
that's great. And so I hope people take that into account, because it really is true. Now, nothing wrong with your friends, nothing wrong with your family. That's not what we're talking about here. But what you're saying is start to change your environment in certain ways. And, one of the things, Case, I tell people all the time is go join your industry association. I don't actually care which one it is, and I don't know which town you're in. But the fact of the matter is, people that join their industry associations are aimed forward. Even if your regional association you don't think is the strongest or doesn't represent everything you believe in, joining that, you're going to be around other people who are also facing forward. They're looking for answers. They're willing to ask questions. They've taken their head out of their shop or their crew, and they're now looking at the business world. And I see that as an indicator of success when I interview somebody about their business and where they're going.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I'll actually add on to that, because I did do that. We have the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association here. And I was basically the young guy sitting at the table, right, with all these older guys. I've been in the business way longer. Like they've been in the business longer than I was alive when I started at the time, right? So I learned a ton from them. And what I also realized by joining those organizations is that you may think that you're sitting around a table with all your competitors, but you're not. You're all on the same team. The competitors are the guys out there that are undercutting everyone. The guys sitting at those tables want to build a business to last, and they want to do a good job. That's not our competition.
No, that's a great way to look at it. All right. We're trucking right along. Tell me about the third mistake you made that told you what you wished you knew.
Well, it's knowing the difference between urgent and important. So there's a lot of things, especially as you get busier and busier, everything seems important, right? Urgent, I should say. But at the end of the day, especially when we're building houses and doing renovations, we're not saving lives. So most things can wait. And what happens is that usually, especially when it comes to business and growing a business, there's a lot of really important things that you need to work on that get pushed aside because a client is upset that the paint color is wrong or the baseboard got dented or something like that, right? And then your phone's ringing, especially now, right? The phone's ringing, the Slack's going off, text messages are going off, emails are dinging, like all this stuff. It's so easy. I could literally just sit here and just react to everything that's happening and feel like I've got nothing done all day, right? So that's where it's like this, for example, having this conversation with you is important. So you turn off all the notifications, and hopefully I remember to turn off my notifications before I check it now, but
you'll find out when somebody pings you.
You turn off all the notifications and you make it happen. And I think that's what we need to do with everything that's important, not just in your business, but in your life, right? Your family is important. Put time aside for your family. My wife doesn't necessarily like to be scheduled into my calendar, but I'm like, that's what I need to do for myself to make sure that I'm there, right? Same with my son. Those sort of things. It's making sure that you understand what's important to you and your business, and you put that first.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because sometimes when I say it, it can sound theoretical. And people always say back to me, Dom, you don't understand my business. My phone's going off all the time. Guys are coming in, or guys are walking across the yard to talk to me, and okay. But I'm the leader. You're the leader. You call the shots. And if you allow the insanity to just keep going, the insanity is going to keep going. I actually do an exercise called Stop the Insanity, which I know is a cheesy workout video from the 90s, but that's not what I mean. But what made you, urgent versus important sounds a lot like a quote from a book that I've read, but you've added some flavors to it. Tell me how you got to urgent versus important as being important. if
Uh,
that makes sense.
yeah. I guess a lot of this stuff is I read a lot of books. I think that this concept probably came from Tony Robbins as well. But a lot of them, they're just kind of learning from each other, right? And if you
Oh
read,
yeah.
what I find in reading business books, I still read them all the time, or personal development books, everybody says the same stuff. They just say it in their own
Listen,
way.
don't be telling people that, okay?
But
There's no,
but it doesn't, it's not a bad thing. That's why you keep doing it, right? And that's the
yeah,
environment, right? You need to keep hearing the same things. And the thing is that it gets boring, right? We don't like, for the most part, we're not going to read the same book 30
yeah,
times,
yeah,
but you'll read a similar book 30 times because there might be something different, or it gives you another tweak on
yeah,
something, or reminds you of something, because we're never going to remember everything, right? So that's why you constantly need to like bombard yourself and let all the good stuff in, and make sure you guard your mind and keep all the bad stuff out.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. I know that because I was in that personal improvement space for a long time when I was running my last company, which was a business coaching organization. And I trained business coaches professionally all around the world for a long, long time. That's where I was partners with Brian. You could really, we always joked that you could take all the books back to two books, both written by Napoleon Hill. Yeah, all of them. If you just read Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People, you pretty much got everything covered. Everything else seems to be a similar theme, just taken off on a different angle.
Yeah.
If people are a fan of the Oz principle, well, that concept, I've been teaching that one, which is about being a winner or a whiner in life, or winner and loser in life.
I get that one.
You've never seen the Oz principle?
Oh, now you got to teach me this one.
Oh, okay. Well, it's the way we separate the world by the choices we make and the kinds. I'm a person based on the choices I make, and you and I can build a team based on those kinds of people. So if I make choices where I'm proactive, take responsibility, and take ownership, I'm an above the line person. If I'm faced with a choice and I choose to blame, make excuses, I'm negative, and I'm in denial, that's another type of person. And you have to think, I have to think, all of us have to think about what kind of team we want, what kind of clients we want, what will I accept? And that's where all these things come together. So that's a book called The Oz Principle. It actually started from the University of Brisbane, and it's called The Internal or External Locus of Control. And I got a ton more geeky references like that if you want them.
I'm making notes of that one. So
I'll tell you later as well. But but imagine having a team of just people who were proactive, took ownership and responsibility, versus blame, excuse, and denial. How different would your company be, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, this is your interview, not mine. Tell me, so that's number 3, urgent versus important.
It's kind of like we practice this or something, because this flows again into the next one, which to me was similar. It's the person, right? It's aligning values. So it's making sure that your team has values that are aligned. And I'll share a story. So at one point, this was 5 years ago, I think. Yeah, about 5 years ago. I grew pretty quick, right? It's not that hard to grow a construction company if you do good work, but it's harder to make money, right? That was the tricky part. We were growing, we had lots of work, but I wasn't necessarily making money at the beginning because of all the mistakes I was making. But another one of the mistakes, as I was growing, is that I grew too fast, and I would just hire on whoever, right? There are like individuals, like I don't think I've ever hired a bad person, but I've hired people that weren't just aligned with the values of the business and the direction that we were going, right? I'm not saying that because they don't have the same values that they shouldn't work somewhere. They're bad people. That's not what I'm saying at all. Is that it's just we're not the right bus, right? Find another bus. And I didn't know that at first. And so we were going pretty quick. I think I had about 15 guys, and trying to manage all that. But then top it all off, we ended up going to Florida for like 3 months. I was traveling back and forth, but I was kind of just working while I was there, but I wanted to try the remote thing.
Right.
And while I was away, things were just kind of hitting the fan. Things that I won't say on your podcast.
Oh, yeah, no, I got you.
People were flying off the fan and hitting them. So anyway, we ended up sorting through that. But what was happening is that we had internal problems. So within the company, I was having like groups of people that were kind of teaming up, right? So people weren't getting along. So then we deal with enough problems as business owners, right? The last thing you want to do is deal with your own teammates fighting. Like you're on the same team and you're fighting.
Drama.
Yeah. What's the point? Like who wants drama? I'm never one to be drama. I'm like, it drove me nuts at the time. Or not too long ago, my wife, I guess actually quite a long time ago now, I guess. But anyways, my wife was an esthetician. I was like, man, I had more drama in the construction company than there was at the spa, right? That was a joke. But But that was the biggest thing. And that was because I didn't have those values that are aligned. Now we have a very strict hiring process that we follow. We need people now, but we will actually, you probably heard this before too. You hire slow and fire fast, right? Like it's easier said than done, but that'll save you so much time in the long run.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it does sound like we rehearsed this.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, as much as I know this stuff and I've been teaching it for years and I've been doing it in my own company, I still fall victim to it because this is going to sound so silly, but I just want somebody that's going to cut my lawn. And I can't find a guy who will power rake and do my lawn without drama. How hard is that? How hard? It's the simplest ask, and it's taken me years. And I'll hire a guy because he can do it, but then the drama starts. The text messages that are as long as my leg, back and forth. I'm like, oh, this is not good. This is no good. This is a pretty simple job. We shouldn't have this much communication. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I fall victim to it as well. And I keep thinking I need to have an intake process for my lawn to get taken care of.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about it from that end, but yeah, it's true. Funny you said that. We actually had something like that. We had somebody taking care of our lawn at one point, and there was drama. It was like literally like stuff. It was like they'd come and do like an hour of work and leave, and then they were here, and then they were fighting. And it was like, all right, this isn't working.
Yeah, this isn't working. Yeah, and so sometimes, and I don't know if you hear this as well on your show, but when I talk about values, aligned values, I think people look at me and they're like, uh-oh, Dom is eating his Lucky Charms again. We're going to start talking about unicorns. But really, the values that you and I have as a business owner is the glue that holds the company together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, sir. Number 5.
Last thing was, actually, you probably had a 6th one to that, which is more about what you do and the processes and stuff. But 5 is a round number, so we just stuck with 5.
Yeah, okay.
Number 5 for me was how to say no to a project, right? So that was kind of what you were referring to before, is like, how did you get to that point where you became niche and you became either decided what you want to do in the project? It took some time. But what I also realized is that when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So by default, you're saying no. Even though you think you're saying yes, you're actually saying no to something else. And funny, the universe works in funny ways. Is that when you start saying no and you get more clear on the projects that you want to do, more of those projects start to show up. I don't know how it works. It works though. And I think it's one of those things like where focus goes, energy flows, and everything is energy. But if you focus on what you really want and you say no to what you don't want, more of what you want will come. If you focus on what you don't want though, more of what you don't want will likely come, right? So once again, you got to focus on what it is that you do want, say no to the other stuff so that you have room for all the stuff that you want.
Wow. How did you get this much wisdom? Because to me, you're speaking with a lot of wisdom, really, like sage wisdom that a lot of older people, please take this as a compliment, that I hear a lot of older people suddenly realizing. But you're a pretty young guy. Obviously, you read a lot, but how did you get there? How did you get here? Like what kind of pain did you have to go through to move towards figuring it out?
It goes back to the environment, right? I just put myself in those environments and surrounded myself with those people, listened to podcasts and read books. That's what I do, right? So it's interesting to me. I think whether you own a business or not, personal development and just improving yourself. Like one of my values is mastery. I don't believe in perfection, but I do believe in becoming better than I was yesterday. So am I going to be perfect? No, nobody's perfect. And it's actually Tony Robbins, maybe you got it from someone else, but he actually says perfection is the lowest standard you can have for yourself because it's no standard at all. It's impossible. So mastery is what I agree with, is because it's not about being perfect. It's never about being perfect. It's just about being better. It's about becoming and evolving who ultimately I think you're supposed to be, right? And that's different for everybody.
Yeah. Wow. Well said. So well said. I don't want to miss the numbers here. Numbers are hard to track. It's hard to know what numbers to track. Mm-hmm. It's boring to track numbers. These are all things I hear from people. And maybe our listeners right now are saying those same things. Oh, numbers. I know I should be checking them, but I don't. How did you get started on your numbers journey? How did numbers make it on the list?
So, well, numbers are one of those things that doesn't lie, right? So they tell the truth if you put the right numbers in. And tracking them is another story though. So that's where I knew that wasn't one of my strengths. I'm definitely more the visionary in the company. Like I take action. I'm kind of like the bull in the china shop where I'm like, I see something, I go after it. And so I need somebody to kind of rein me in sometimes. And that's where I find like, if you have a good partner, that's actually a great thing. So you need to find somebody who's the opposite of you, but you work well together. And that just happened to be my brother, Chad. And he's an engineer. So a mechanical engineer by trade. So he just loves numbers. So I just said, hey, this was, I think a few years ago, I said, he has his own business doing that too, or in the engineering side. I said, look, I need help though. I know that this is my weakness. I know you're good at this stuff. How would you feel about bringing your skills and helping me grow this? And he said, yeah, let's do this. And so we've been doing it. So he's definitely the person who tracks everything. He's the systems and processes guy. Like I always get frustrated because he wants to have so many meetings on different things and he's tracking all this stuff. And I'm like, I just want to go out and do this stuff.
I just want to build. Yeah. I just want to build.
I want to build. I just want to record. I just want to get the next project and, and help our sales side and do all the marketing. Like, anyway, so I love all that stuff, but I make sure I take the time so he has the information that he needs. Right. And then I have no trouble reviewing them and going over them and being like, hey, this doesn't look right. Or like, I know them when I look at them, but actually taking the time to track them is not something that I really love doing. So I found somebody who does love doing it.
Yeah, that's it. And that's a good point. There's people out there, believe it or not, who like to put numbers in boxes on an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And then there's people like you and I who like to review those numbers. And actually, I'm not a numbers guy. I'm a patterns guy. I like to see the patterns. I like to see when things shift. If that number, whatever I'm defining, is 6, and it's always the number 6, sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 8, but it's generally 6. I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. If it drops to 4, it jumps up to 9, that's a pattern break. And that's all I see. I'm like, okay, why? Is that a good or a bad? What do we have to do about it? What does it mean? Where did it start? How do I change it? How do I make it what I want? And then I have intelligent questions to ask about the business. And I don't waste my time really talking about things that if it was supposed to be 6 all the time, it's just 6. That's fine. That's running okay. How did you figure out what numbers? Did Chad come and say which numbers were important to track?
Yeah, to some extent, like that's what he's been looking like. We've been really good at like doing our books and staying up to date on that stuff. So in terms of the numbers, it's been a work in progress. So obviously there's going to be different numbers when it comes to the financial side versus like the sales side. So the sales side, one of the things that we're trying to figure out right now is because we do a lot online, we're getting more and more leads, but what we're trying to figure out now is what do we want to track? Are they good leads or not? And if they're not good leads, why are we getting them? How do we get more of the leads that we want? Right. So those are the numbers that we're trying to track now. And we're very conscious of the fact that, you don't want to just track everything. You want to track
the indicator.
That you can actually, you don't want to track something unless you're going to do something with the information, right? If you're not going to do anything with the information, then what's the point? You're just wasting your time. So that's what we're trying to do on the sales side, is figuring out how can we quantify whether or not it's a good lead. And then what's harder is where did that lead come from? Because where they say it came from might not be where it comes from, because there's,
and they don't remember, or they say the internet, or I saw your ad, and that doesn't help. Yeah. Do you use a strategic planning system?
We don't actually.
Because it sounds like you do. Maybe we do. The language of what's that?
Maybe we do subconsciously. I know we've been working on a couple different programs, but I don't know if we're actually unless Chad's implementing something and I'm not aware of it. But
yeah, well, some people listening might already know. You said a couple of key words here that made me think that you're using a strategic planning system, and the key words you used was implementer. So Chad is your implementer and you're the visionary, and that to me comes from Traction, which is a book by Gino Wickman. He also wrote a couple other books. Get a Grip is one of them, and that's a strategic planning system for reinventing a business while you're running it. And I've been teaching and using that system in my own businesses for years. The other one that some people listening might be using is the Rockefeller Habits, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, which is written by Vern Harnish. Those two are rock star. Those are the two go-to systems for just figuring out what numbers to track. And then the hard part, the really hard part, and maybe you and Chad are having a bit of this as well. The hard part is sticking to it, like having the meetings to talk about the numbers. It's easy when it's exciting. The first week, we're going to have this meeting. We're going to talk about these numbers. Week 2, it's pretty good. Week 3, and it just starts to die off. And what happens to our team is they're like, oh, boss has got the flavor of the week. Yeah, okay, we're all on board, until you forget about it. It goes away. And so that's where somebody like me comes in and is like, no, this is how we keep it going. It's how you keep it exciting. But those are the key words you've been using. The implementer, Chad, having your key metrics, having your numbers, tracking them. Fantastic.
So yeah, we did read traction. So that is where the visionary and the implementer came from. I can't specifically remember what he has in there, but you know what? We are doing like setting up our company, and we put in, like, we laid it out the way they have it in that book. And we're trying to fill in those, well, I shouldn't say try, we are filling in those gaps of the people on the team that were missing, right? So now we have our project manager, and we have our marketing manager, and now we're waiting for somebody to fill in that financial stuff. Because what we realized that obviously my name was in a lot of these boxes, and we're slowly filling in all those boxes. But like I said, you got to bring on the right people.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. I'm so enjoying listening to you, because you are moving into that business person who happens to run a construction company, not a contractor with a group of guys or a crew of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the momentum as it becomes a lot more exciting too. So makes it all worth it in the end.
Yeah. You said there was a number 6. Do you have time for a number 6? What was the one you added?
Well, it was going to be the systems and processes, right? I said there's something that you had mentioned, as you were talking before, I'm like, that technically probably would have been number 6, but working with 5. But the systems and processes would be another thing. And that's where Chad is. I feel like that's something that is constantly evolving, for sure, that you can't just necessarily start with that. I think I put them in this order because I feel like that was the order that made the most sense in my mind, or at least that's how I wish I had implemented them. Because you kind of need to make sure you're making money first, right? And then you need to make sure that you're creating the environment where you want to win, right? And then you need to make sure that you understand where you need to focus your time, and then you need to make sure you got the right people on the bus, and then move on to number 5, which was, at that point, hopefully you can start saying no, right? And then maybe while you're doing that, you're also implementing all the processes and systems, because I think if I would have started with processes and systems, for example, you just get lost, right? You become like, it's almost like paralysis by analysis, right? So you're trying to get it perfect. I think that's one of the reasons why I probably failed a lot, but also why we've been able to be successful, is that I'll just act, right? When we wanted to start a podcast, I didn't know what podcasts were 5 years ago until one of our employees actually mentioned it to me, and a month later I had a podcast. So I was like, all right, this makes sense. Let's just do it.
Let's see how it works. Well, and has the podcast brought you business?
I don't know if the podcast per se has brought us business. The podcast has helped us create relationships, convert for sure, but also create relationships with other people in the industry. YouTube channel has definitely brought us business. We've had people find us on YouTube and brought us business. But I think it's a combination of everything, right? It's hard. You can't just do one thing and expect to get business from it, especially nowadays, because everyone's like, there's so many things coming at us from different directions. You have to be everywhere. It doesn't matter how big or small you are. You just have to figure out like maybe what the top 3 things are for your industry, and make sure you do those 3 things. And once again, you don't want to start doing something unless you're going to continue with it or actually do something with it, right? If you can't be consistent, then don't do it.
Yeah, commit to it. It's an incredible amount of work hosting a podcast, isn't it?
Yeah. With everything we do.
Yeah.
All my pain is self-inflicted pain, by the way.
Well, I was going to ask, did you ever have a horrible day in business? And then you had to hit reset and go, okay, listen, what am I doing here? Yeah.
Well, I can share, like, I was in a lawsuit for 4 years. Oh, right? Like, I don't think it was necessarily my mistake. Some things went our way, some things went their way. But it was, once again, I had the wrong person on my mistake. I'm not going to say it was that person's fault, but I had the wrong people on the bus, which is my mistake. And I wasn't managing them well, or managing the job well. And I was relying too much, and things just weren't going as well as they could have. And they the clients lost trust. Right. So this was 6-7 years ago at this point when we did that job. Maybe a little bit longer, but either way, they lost trust. And when they lost trust, it's really hard to gain it back. Right. So then it just started to get worse, and then they didn't pay. And then I was young still at the time, right? I was like, what do I do? So I just did what I thought I had to do, and then lien their property. And then they ended up countersuing for like the cost of the project. And then the thing blew up, and it was like 4 years of lost time and money, and nobody wins going to court, by the way.
Oh, well, the lawyers do.
Yeah.
The lawyers win going to court.
So
Yeah, we should maybe do an episode on what I learned by going to court because, but we have to do it twice as long because I've got some points I want to throw in there too.
Yeah, it's not something I wish on anyone, but honestly, like those 4 years is where I learned a lot about myself and business in general, what we should do and shouldn't be doing, and I think it made me a better I know it made me a better person, but also a better business owner for sure, 100%.
Yeah, if you're like me, it made me a more tempered business person.
Yeah.
Like anytime that we start reverting back to the terms of the contract, we are out of luck. That is the end of that relationship. We should not be reverting to the terms of the contract.
Right.
You know,
I never like looking back at that contract.
No, it means things are going the wrong direction. I get it for technical things like we're going to use this kind of faucet and these kind of pulls, and there's going to be 6 steps going to this landing and elevation. That's terms of the contract. But I mean, when you're reverting to, in the case that this happens, we will agree to do that, then you're in trouble, and it's going in a bad direction. Hop in and fix it now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing. Actually, my electrician, I learned a lot from him. He's been in business a long time. And one thing he said to me, he's like, the one thing I learned in business is to always finish a job no matter what. So I'm like, that's really good tip. So I took that, and now we've had a couple other jobs that, didn't go so well, but like we finish a job no matter what, we get it done. Client can't complain about anything at that point. If they choose to pay or not, right? It's up to them, and we do what we need to do at our end, right? But now that I know how expensive it is to go to court.
Well, and 4 years of your life, 4 years of sleep, right?
Yeah.
That's 1,200 nights of sleep that are burned up and gone. I'm not sure if you did the math. It's a lot of, maybe 1,600 nights of sleep for those of you who are better at math than me. But it's painful.
When I was doing that, I was in court building our passive house, and we had our baby all at the same time when all that started.
Yeah. And I thought what I thought you were going to say is I was in court building the passive house, but not building the company, because you're in such a reactive mode. You can't actually build the business. And that's the opportunity cost you talked about, of saying no to one thing is yes to another. Or
absolutely. The amount of time that you put into just preparing for that stuff and then going, such a waste of time. That's why I tell clients now, I'm like, you'd have to owe me a lot of money for me to come after you, but I would, if I didn't believe you were going to pay, then I wouldn't be sitting here with you right now, sort of thing. Right. But it's the law is not in the business's favor, right? But it's such a waste of time for everybody. Like there's other ways to resolve issues.
Yeah. All right, sir. Wow. That was like, I feel like I have the life cycle of a fruit fly. In 50 minutes, we went through a ton of content. If somebody wants to reach out to you, because you've just done an impressive job here, how would they find you in this big, big world?
Well, you can go to theconsciousbuilder.com. Best place to see all the stuff that we're doing, all the content we're putting out is on our YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube, search The Conscious Builder, comment there, check out what we're doing there. If you have any questions, we got lots of stuff happening there.
Yeah. Well, I've just so enjoyed having you as a guest. Thank you for everything you've shared. And it's all nice and succinct. 5. We actually got 6 points out of you. We got a bonus point.
Yeah.
We got an extra one. All right, Casey, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dominic. This is great.
Yeah. Have a great day.